Joe Jeanette and Sam McVeigh had one of the most brutal fights in the entire history of the game. April 17th, 1909 in Paris, France. It was for the colored heavyweight championship belt that was relinquished from Jack Johnson when he would defeat Tommy Burns in Sydney, Australia. Jack Johnson would win the World Heavyweight Championship belt, first African-American fighter to do so. And in doing so, he had to relinquish his colored heavyweight championship belt that he would win in 1903 over Denver Ed Martin. Now, both Joe Jeanette and Sam McVeigh had fought for this title opportunity their entire career. It was a chance of a lifetime. But they would get their shot, and they were the worthy contenders for that belt. Joe Jeanette would go down for 27 times during the course of that fight. And there were times when Joe Jeanette in his corner had to use a paper bag for oxygen. An entire bucket of water was thrown over the head of Joe Jeanette. Now, the corner, of course, of Sam McVeigh was furious, but they would quickly point out that there was no rules state that they could not do so. But in return, it would help Joe Jeanette. It would revive him. It would help him with his oxygen. And it would give him some time to recover from 27 chips of the canvas. And because of that, Joe Jeanette would knock down Sam McVeigh 11 times in 48 rounds. McVeigh was brutally beaten. Swollen eye, busted rib, busted lip, fractured nose. He could hardly walk. He couldn't hold his arms up. He was basically unrecognizable. And in the 49th round, he could not answer the bell. He would be knocked out. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series, and I want to go through the careers of Joe Jeanette from Hoboken, New Jersey, and Sam McVeigh from Oxnard, California, right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Now, Joe Jeanette would face Sam Langford several times. Langford would win 4 fights. Jeanette would win 3, 2 draws, and 5 no decisions. They would fight in Boston, New York, Paris, France, Syracuse, New York, Toledo, Ohio, just to name a few. Joe Jeanette was born in North Bergen, New Jersey, August 26, 1879. He stood 5 foot 10 inches and he weighed 190 to 200 pounds. Now, he was a very, very good fighter, was Joe Jeanette. Never truly got the opportunities that he so rightfully deserved. He was in there with fighters such as Jack Johnson. January 16, 1906. Fought him in New York. 3 rounds, no decision. Fought him again March 17th, 1906. In Baltimore, Maryland. 15 rounds. Now, when you fight a man that often, with the caliber of Jack Johnson, back to back, that's showing the type of fighter that he was. Because he tried his very best to get title opportunities with the champions during his day. And he was unsuccessful in doing so. You see, during those days, African-American fighters didn't get title opportunities. Matter of fact, it took Jack Johnson 1908 before he got his shot. And he chased Tommy Burns around the world. In 1908, Joe Jeanette would face Jim Jeffries January 27th. And he would knock him out in 2 rounds. Now, that's not the Boilermaker. The Boilermaker was Jim Jeffries. He fought Jim Jeffords. And that's the closest opportunity he would get to a name close enough to the World Heavyweight Championship belt. You see, Joe Jeanette was very strong. He was an honorable man. Husband with wonderful children. And I have him top 5 greatest African-American fighters in the history of the game. He was a phenomenal fighter, was Joe Jeanette. He fought Jim Johnson, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 6 rounds, no decision, July 19th of 1912. He'd fight him again, 1913. You can't ask for more of a fighter than Joe Jeanette, because if I break down his entire career, you would be at awe. Sam McVeigh. He fought Jack Johnson in 1903. February 27th of that year. Lost to him in 20 rounds. He would face Kid Carter, May 5th, 1903. Los Angeles, California, and he would knock him out in 13 rounds. Denver Ed Martin, September 15th, and he would knock him out in 1 round. We faced Jack Johnson, October 27th, 1903, and he would lose to him once again in 20 rounds. He'd get right back in there with Jack Johnson, April 22nd, 1904. And he'd be stopped this time in 20 rounds. You know, when you look at fighters such as Joe Jeanette and Sam McVeigh, you're looking at men with class, wore 3-piece suits, fedora hats, smoked cigars on their spare time. But when they got in that ring, they didn't care who you were. They didn't care where they fought. They gave it their all. They never ducked another fighter. They didn't price themselves out of a fight. They fought many times in 1 week. Why? Because they were prize fighters and took the game for what it was. And the only thing they asked for was an opportunity to fight for the World Heavyweight Championship. And they were never given that shot. Yes, they were both colored heavyweight champions. But they had to fight one another in order to become that. And a game of boxing was designed to find out who was the better fighter in your day. And both men tested themselves and tried to test the world. And unfortunately for them, unlike today, they did not have the opportunities to show their mettle against fighters that did not look like them. When you look at Sam McVeigh, just for an example of my point. Now, he would face Sam Langford so many times. For an example, Sam Langford would defeat him 4 times. McVeigh would defeat him twice with 4 draws and 5 no-decision contests. Now, keep in mind, no decisions can go up to 20 rounds, 30 rounds. It's a fight. It's a fight to the death. And the fighters during those days fought that way because that's the way it was. Salute to Sam McVeigh. Salute to Joe Jeanette. 2 great fighters. Just wanted to acknowledge that particular fight that happened April 17th, 1907, right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Thanks for hanging in there with me. This conversation has been a part of Black History Month. Greatest African American fighters in history. Salute.